Hello everybody, it's Merlin here, and if you watched my last video there, I reviewed Glass, which I had certain feelings about, but you can check that out if you want to know more. But I saw a movie that, on a double feature actually, right after Glass, I saw Dragon Ball Super Broly, which I have to say was quite a big surprise, because, you know, as you guys might know on the channel, or ladies, everybody, all my subscribers probably know, I'm not a huge fan of Broly. I think that he's kind of representation of all the surface level stuff that a lot of non-fans that don't know the story of Dragon Ball assume about Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. It's all about screaming and muscles and power and you know, and I think that's the stuff that definitely attracts people into the story, but as we all know, action can't really be that good if it doesn't have a good story. And I think that Dragon Ball has a great world and great characters. And cool powers as well, obviously, for the escapism. But Broly, I think, has been kind of the basic symbol of that for a long time, and I know a lot of people like him, but I always felt he was kind of overrated because of that. Like, there's more interesting villains. Though, I will say his original movie, which even though it wasn't exactly canon, was one of the better ones. There was an interesting story there, but it wasn't fully fleshed out. Now, for those of you that might not have seen it, I was wondering, okay, I'm not fully caught up on Super. I'm like, will I have to know everything? Much like Battle of Gods, much like Resurrection of Frieza, you don't really need to know a lot about the details going in. This is very much a Broly movie, and that's actually a pretty cool thing, because unlike any other movie I've seen for Dragon Ball, it has, and honestly a lot of the anime, this film, the ratio of plot and story and character development versus action is the highest. Like, I know Battle of Gods wasn't quite as high on it because it was establishing this other element with the God of Destruction of the world, which the world building is cool. I like that element. They're expanding a lot with Super for the most part. I think that the mythology of the universe I always wanted fleshed out. But in this one, they spent a good half an hour or so, I think, before they actually see Goku and the gang in the present time. You spend a lot of time. Basically, the first part of the movie is remaking a lot of those elements from the original Broly movie, and we see Paragus again, and we see Broly in the test tube, you know, growing up, the, what do they call that, the nurturing tube or something, which I wonder how long they're actually in there. I might have to look that up. Someone let me know. But, you know, King Vegeta is jealous and fearful of Broly's power, and that's why he sends him off. And Paragus I always thought was a very interesting villain, and they actually send him and Broly off to this deserted planet, and he kills another guy that's with him. That's a pretty cool guy who's like a pilot to conserve food. And I'm like, there's some really interesting character stuff. Like, I feel like I'm watching a movie that isn't just a Dragon Ball movie. Like, they're really taking their time and fleshing this out, and you learn more about the Saiyans and their way of life and their relation to the Frieza Force, and when King Cold passed the torch of leadership over to Frieza. And then Bardock comes in, and they don't really talk about his psychic visions of the future, but he's all like, they kind of change it to say, he kind of suspects Frieza might turn against them someday, and then he's like, okay, I want to save Goku and send him off because I'm tired of killing. Like, they suggest in this film that even though Saiyans, they mentioned Frieza says they're all warriors, but you see that even though the main element of society for Saiyans is fighting and conquering worlds, not every Saiyan is a warrior. So they show that, you know, there's more aspects to their society, which I really liked. There were scientists, there were the pilots, the engineers. I liked that. You know, that was really cool. And you see Goku's mother, which I thought was really cool. And you see that Bardock really is, he's not that bad of a guy in comparison. Like, I like that one line where he's like, I'm tired of killing. I want to save something for once. And so he decides to give his son a new life away from this. And I think that's really cool. And they're very clearly, like, stemming from the whole Jor-El with Kal-El and sending Superman off. Like, I'm like, this is so that, but I'm okay with that. That was very cool. And, yeah, like, just, and you learn, and Paragus is more sympathetic in this one, in a way, like, that he comes back later, some point in the middle of the series in the first movie, and he's like, I'll trick you and bring you to this planet, King Vegeta. You can be the new king. This one, it's like he's been away for a long time. He doesn't know about Frieza destroying the planet or anything. He just has this hatred towards Vegeta's family. And Broly, the biggest thing about this movie, and I can't believe I'm saying this, they make Broly a more interesting, well-rounded, and sympathetic character. Broly is literally a product of his horrible environment and circumstances, and he's not an evil, crazy guy. You know, and they show that he has been manipulated by his father and his father's desire for vengeance. And who does Broly hate? Vegeta. He hates Vegeta because he knows Vegeta is responsible. His family's responsible for everything his dad and him had to go through, and for the life he had to lead on that horrible planet, you know. And where his best friend, basically his dog, this big monster, his only friend was a monster that tried to eat him all the time. You know, he ended up having to fight against it because his father thought that would weaken his emotions, because that was playing and not training. And I thought that was great, and like how sad he was. And he finds some people in the Frieza Force, this one girl and this old gruff pilot guy, that they kind of work on the outliers of the Frieza's empire, but they don't know him directly. So not everybody that works for Frieza is completely evil. It's like the Empire in Star Wars. Like they're not simplifying it quite as much. I'm like, what is happening? Like this is a different level of writing. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the best thing ever, but I was like, and the fact that Toriyama did this, like, I was like, ooh, that's really cool. I never thought I'd care about Broly. Like, I mean, and I guess the one minor negative I could say, and I mean, I didn't mind, because I was so intrigued by the story and the adventure and the build-up of this, and the fact that Frieza knows he can't really beat Goku and Vegeta right now, so he just says, I'm going to find these two Saiyans, and they don't know what I did. I'm going to manipulate them and play around, and he doesn't know that Broly has this latent ability. Of course, nobody does, and then it ensues with the battle, and Goku and Vegeta go to their Super Saiyan God states, and they have to fuse. And I like the fact that Vegeta kind of has a couple of lines about how stupid fusion is. Like, yeah, we're going to do it, but we know it's kind of dumb. Like, so Toriyama, I mean, I don't know if that's exactly translated, but somebody somewhere at Funimation or something was like, yeah, Dragon Ball is pretty silly, but Fusion's kind of pushing it a little. But they made it interesting and humorous. I like that. So I've never been a big fan of Fusion, so I appreciated that. But yeah, I liked that, and I like the fact that Frieza is planning to kind of use Broly as his minion, because for once he has to take a back seat. So I liked that, and there was some good humor at some points too. The battle itself, I guess the one negative, there was some good action. Like the couple fights that were here were very well animated, very colorful, very detailed, but there wasn't that much action. So if you do go to Dragon Ball stuff specifically for the fighting, they give you just enough, in my opinion. But you know how it is if you have tons of action. And I talked to one guy recently, like, you know, someone I work with. He's like, you know, I've spent years and years seeing all this action. Like, I'd be cool with just characters hanging out, having a picnic, and Krillin being a cop, and like just their interactions and their lives, seeing how they live is more interesting than all the fighting. Personally, maybe that's because we grow up and our perceptions change a little bit. That's how I look at it. That's the stuff that I look for now. Like when I was a kid, of course, I got drawn into the action of the world, but the characters have always been what stuck with me, and the intricacies of the mythology and the themes and the characters, like with any story, I love, even in this escapist stuff. So to see a Broly movie where I was really that excited and interested was amazing. Like I said, there was one minor complaint that I can't really say is really bad, but it's sort of one of those things. Like I said, I'm like, I have to admit that I kind of like this version of Broly, but him being more sympathetic and being more fleshed out kind of makes him a less intimidating force. Like one thing I will say I liked about the original one is that they really showed how powerful he was. You had Goku, you had Vegeta, Future Trunks, Gohan, and Piccolo all trying to fight this guy, and they couldn't touch him. And then they all combined their powers into Goku, and through kind of lazy writing, they beat him. So it's like, and this one, it's like the power gap isn't quite as big. Like he just keeps getting stronger and keeps learning, but there isn't that big of a difference. So he never feels like there's as much danger. The only danger is you're worried that Broly will destroy himself, or he'll eventually be killed by these guys, which they don't think is going to happen. But you know, his father kind of realizes, oh, like what could happen? What have I done? So it was a nice twist, and it was well done. It was well written, and I'm like, man, I was so ready to hate on Broly, and they're just bringing him because of the fans liking him, and like, you know, that's also the only other negative I could think of, is that this movie was kind of, sort of implying like, oh, Broly's going to be in the anime if it continues. And I guess that's fine. He could be an ally, but does that mean he's just going to be relegated to the background? Like, how much of a character is he really going to be? So it didn't really feel like it had a full conclusion. Exactly. Like the story was resolved kind of like Goku's like, hey, you know, I can see we can be friends. And, you know, the idea that, like, violence isn't always the last resort. Like, hey, like, we don't have to do this. And Goku's like, you know, I fought a lot of bad people, but I don't think you're one of them. And there's like, and I thought that was interesting. Like, Goku isn't the smartest guy, but he is kind of pure-hearted and he has a sense of people. So it's interesting. There was a lot of fun, cool stuff. I was kind of sad I didn't really get to see a lot of the side characters do much. That was the one thing about Fukkatsu no F that I really liked. Like, Frieza coming back and fighting everybody was like, that's kind of something I always wanted. I know there were a lot of jokes about that one, some inconsistencies, but it was a lot of fun. I think this one's not quite as much fun, not quite as heavy on the action, but there's a lot more story. And it does something I never thought would really happen. Never thought anyone would care about, but they made Broly a more fleshed out, interesting character. It was pretty good. And, you know, Vic Mignogna had a lot of fun playing him with more lines. Did a good job. Yeah, guys, if you like Broly, certainly, and even if you don't like Broly, I'd recommend this one. I saw it in theaters, which was cool, but if you got to wait to see it, I would say, man, you know, this is one of the best pieces of Dragon Ball I've seen in a while. It really has. It definitely repeats elements of Bardock and elements of the original Broly movie. It's partially a remake of those and fuses them together. But it works. It works pretty well. It all balances. It's almost 2 hours long. It's like an hour 40. It's like the longest one. And that's all movie, really. So there's a lot of plot, and it felt like it went by really fast. Yeah, I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So fans of Dragon Ball, fans of Broly, certainly. Not quite as much action, I'll admit. If you're looking for that, the action was good, but there wasn't much. But if you like the story and the characters, it's a really worth your time. All right, guys. Well, let me know what you thought about the Broly movie below if you saw it. And let me know other videos you'd like to see on the channel. I've got another one planning that's a fleshed out, full analysis video towards the end of the month. And then got a few podcasts here and there planned out in the meantime. So videos are coming out, working to improve things when I have the time. Consistency, always fun. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day and stay magical.